Hello Wanderers, and thank you for clicking on another video. So, today's video is going to be epic fantasy series that have really worthwhile world building and really great character development that has a lot more complex plots. And yeah, I think we should really just dive in, and I think it's going to be really, really cool. So, the first series that I'm going to talk about is the Lightbringer Series by Brent Weeks. There are 5 books in the series, and all 5 books have been released already, so you're not going to be waiting for very, very long in order to get to the last book. Thank you, Patrick Rothfuss, Name of the Wind. So, the Lightbringer series is a series that focuses around several different characters. So it's not a singular character that you're following throughout the journey. You've got a couple of points of views throughout the different books. So you may start with one character's point of view and they might have an impact later in the series, maybe even in the last book, but you won't necessarily have their point of view in the last book. You might have someone else's point of view in the last book. But for the series, the main characters are Kip, Gavin, Karis, Liv, and Taya. There are a few other characters, secondary characters, who play major roles, and I may mention them as I'm going through it, but those are the main characters that we are focusing on. So, the magic system within the series is very, very good. I think it's excellent. It's based on colors, so it's I think I'm pronouncing this right. Chromatology. Okay, we're gonna cut that up. And the colors are basically assigned to each person. So you could have someone who is monochrome, and you could have someone who's bichrome. So monochrome, someone who can only manipulate one color. So for example, red or yellow or blue. And then you have someone who is bichrome who can manipulate maybe 2 colors, so it'll be like red or green or yellow and ultraviolet, and you can go on and on, trichrome, etc, etc. So people who can manipulate more colors are rarer, and each color has different aspects that they provide. So for example, yellow is seen as a little bit more brittle, a little bit more liquidy, whereas red is kind of more rage inducing, and blue is a lot more stable and it brings calmness, and in terms of building and stuff like that, it's a lot more compact and durable. So they have different aspects to them, as well as they give you different attributes to yourself as you use them, which is really, really cool. I think it's a very interesting system. So I've never really seen it used in this way before, which I think was really, really cool. So I think the magic system was complex enough that it was intriguing, but not so complex that you didn't really know what was going on, which I thought was really, really cool. So the characters themselves, it is, okay. So within the story, it does start off in the first book a little bit confusing. Brent Weeks kind of jumps into the story, so you start off with a brand new character in a brand new setting, and you haven't really figured out the magic system yet. He kind of just throws you into it, into the drama, into the action, and you kind of have to figure it out as you go along. So the first couple of chapters may be a little bit confusing, but trust me, as the story goes along, the magic system becomes a lot more available, or information about it becomes available, and you're able to kind of piece things together as well, which I think was really, really cool. I didn't mind it much. I was kind of under the impression that, okay, this is happening, but it's happening for a reason, obviously, and I'll be able to make do with it later, with the information given to me later. So I didn't really mind it, but I did see some people were very confused in the first couple of chapters. Bear with it, it'll all make sense, okay, I promise. So the characters themselves, as I said, there are a couple of main characters. Kip is one of my favorites. He's one of the younger characters, and he's really kind of like a black sheep within all of the rest of the characters. He's just learning how to be there. He kind of acts as the audience. He kind of like is figuring things out with us, which I think is really, really cool, because it's an easy way to do world building and gain history and gain information about the magic system. So yeah, he's very sassy, he's very, you know, he grows on you. He does. So it's great. Gavin is very smooth. He's a smooth talker. He is one of the most powerful of our characters because he can use all of the colors. He is one of the very, very, very few people who is a leader within the country who can use these colors, and Gavin Guile he's something. Trust me. I think the politics and the interesting aspects that he brings into it is very, very interesting. He's a little bit of a drama queen, but you can't put too many points of him for that. He goes through a lot. His character development is one of the biggest within the books, and yeah, basically you just kind of you love to see him you love to see him struggle, and you love to see him grow. So he's really, really cool. Karis is one of our main female protagonists. She's part of the elite Black Guard who protects the leaders and the politicians and all of these, and she's a red. She uses red, so she's very full of temper and she can just snap like this, but she kind of learns throughout the series to take on more of a leadership role, and you can really see her become less of this person she thinks she has to be and more into the person she wants to be and the person she's supposed to be, which is very, very cool. Liv is interesting. She comes from an interesting background. I love her father. I think he is one of the best characters, side characters, or one of the best characters. And she goes on a journey. She is very much kind of the opposite side of Kip. She is kind of an antagonist to Kip, and I think it's very interesting because her journey is the way Kip could have gone, and it kind of shows you the other side of the politics and of the magic system and where it could go if you're not supported and if you don't have that kind of just intrigue that the other characters have, the sense of justice that the other characters have. She's very interesting. You love to hate her as well towards the end, so it's really, really great. Taya is a complex character. She starts off as a slave, and she very much kind of uses that as an identity, and people use that against her in terms of manipulation, and again the politics that's coming in here, they're going in there. So I think it's very, very cool how all of these characters interact, and they're not always interacting where you think they should be, which I think is very, very cool. There's a lot happening outside, very far away places, and I mean his relationship with Andros is just something that will keep you on the edge of your seat. You never know what the two of them are going to do next. You're rooting for Kip the whole way. Andros is just, Anyway, so the plot begins very simple. Obviously, in the beginning, you're trying to just build your world building, build your magic system, introduce your characters, and kind of see where everyone fits in. So I do think the beginning is a little bit just a standard first book. It's full of action sequences. You really see a lot of character development in the beginning, and it is kind of a good introduction into what you can expect for the rest. There's also a lot of bases that are set. So one of the things I think Brent does just fantastically in this series is his revelations. You can really, really tell throughout the books that he, especially the last couple of books, that he really thought things out from the first book to the last book, which I think is very, very important, because I was reading the last book and it had just come out, so everything was kind of fresh in my mind still, and I was reading through it, and I read this one part, and then I skipped a couple of pages, I didn't skip, I read through a couple of pages, and then I stopped, and I went back, and I was like, oh my, I literally put the book down, and I was like, what just happened? Because that revelation, he just kind of slips it in there. You really have to be paying attention to what's going on, not just in that character's point of view, but what's going on in other characters' point of view, because they all kind of come together at the end, and you're just like, oh my goodness. But anyway, some of the cons that I do think is the last book is the ending. I am very, very much not a fan of bringing characters back from the death. I think it is just an easy way out, and I feel like if you've already killed this character and I've already had that emotion and I'm just like, you know, like I'm sobbing my eyes out and I'm like, oh, the character, and then you just bring them back and it doesn't even really make sense how you bring them back, it rubs me the wrong way. So that was something I was very, very upset about. I do also think that some of the points of views, especially for exposition, which is important for the revelations and all those things later in the books, I do think they can drag on a little bit. So you really do have to be a little bit patient with this book. Everything does kind of work out at the end in a way that is satisfying, but I do think the last book was a little bit of a disappointment. They did bring in kind of aspects of it that weren't magical. It became very much more philosophical, which I don't mind, but I do think it was a complete 180. We've been seeing throughout the series how people are figuring things out with magic, and how you have to be smart and how you change your magic and work your magic in a way that is an advantage to you and a disadvantage to whoever you are using your magic against. And you can just really see the steps you take using magic, and then all of a sudden the last book becomes philosophical, and it's almost like everything leading up to that when it comes to the magic system just kind of falls away. You know, it was kind of, in the end, everything is inevitable. And that also kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But I mean, Brent Weeks is an excellent, he's a very talented writer. Like I said, there were a couple times I was just like, you know, the planning really did go into this very, very well. But yeah, so Lightbringer, I do have a rating system for all of these books. So for the magic system, I'm giving it a 5-star. For the characters, a 3.5. World building, a 3. Plot as well as pacing, I gave a 4. And style, I gave a 3.5. It really, really is a very good series, and I do recommend it, especially if you do enjoy high fantasy. That is also easy to read. It's not complicated language and this and that. It's a simple read, and but still really keeps you engaged with the plot. So check it out. The second series that I'm going to be talking about is the Codex Alera series by Jim Butcher. Now, you can go look up Codex Alera on any kind of review and you will hear the story about how it came to be. I'm not going to touch on that now. You can go research it and have a look. I do think it's hilarious though. I think the fact that Jim Butcher makes this series work is great. So it is 6 series long. The books are a little bit shorter than the Lightbringer and the third series I'll be doing today. But the 6 books, it really does cover everything that you need. So there are again several characters that goes through several points of view, namely Tavi, Droga, Amara, Isana, and Fidelius. Do not judge me on how I pronounce things, please. This is as complicated as Inkot, the names. So those are your main points of views in which the books are written. So the characters themselves, I think there's a very large variety of them. You have Tavi, who is a younger boy, who's kind of the Kip character, who he is in this world. The difference is he's been integrated in this world, and he is very clever, and he just kind of has to find his place in the world. He has to learn how to trust in himself and how to use his head, and he really grows a lot. He's very personable, and I just really enjoyed him. I thought he was a really good kind of character that you could relate to in terms of he explains things well, and he is also very, very sassy. So I'm very excited. Amara is possibly one of the more complex characters. She has a little bit of a heartbreaking story throughout it. I think I feel bad for her most of the books through. I think she has a very rough time of it. But she is the one character who, she knows who she is, she knows what she believes in, who she believes in, and she will do what she needs to for what she believes in. She's very stubborn, But I really enjoyed her. I thought she was very well written out. I enjoyed her as a character. I think that there was very much a thing of she is who she is and she's unapologetic about it, and she is effective. She knows how to do her job properly, which I really think is great. Isana is a much more muted character. I found her the hardest to kind of relate to, because she's just been struggling a lot, and her backstory is a little bit integrated in a way that I found strange. I understand it. I understand where her character's from and why she did the things that she did, but I don't always agree with it. But she's a very interesting character. I love how she becomes more grounded and more comfortable in herself and her abilities, and she's able to just at the end of it just kind of impress everyone with just how far she's willing to go for the people she loves, the people she wants to protect, and it's very cool. Fidelius is complex. He is a antagonist most of the time, but he's very much the opposite side of the coin to Amara. And I absolutely adore him. I think he is just fascinating. I love the way his mind works and the way he's just willing to do what he needs to do. And I mean, he will just go like from this side to that side, and it's just really, really great. I found him fascinating, and I loved how they took his side of the story and they kind of made you really, really like not hate him, but just like you know, and then they make you love him again, and you understand where he's coming from, but you're still so frustrated. And I think Fidelius is just really, really well written, and I really enjoyed his journey and just where he ended up as well. I think it's great. So it does pick up a little bit from the first book. So the first book is very much you need to kind of, it's very much not world building per se, because I think the focus is very much on the magic system, in that Jim Butcher doesn't explain the magic system, but he kind of just has people using it all of the time to kind of just give you an idea of how it works. And then later on in the series, it kind of becomes clearer and clearer how it works and how it came to be. And so there is, you know, action. It's action packed. Some people say too action packed, but I think it's just really, really cool. It gives you a very good glimpse of where the world is at the moment. I think it's a very good part of the world building, because from the beginning there are tensions, political tensions, there are tensions with other fantastical beings, and it kind of just spreads from there. So it's a very good base to the world building, all of the action set pieces, and I don't think any of them are out of place. I think everything works very well, and I think the action pieces are where they need to be for it to make sense. I don't think there's just unnecessary action. And the things do kind of, there is a domino effect. You know, there is something happens in the first book and the effects of it are still happening in the last book. And it's just snowballed as it's gone, and I think it's really, really cool. Also feels like Jim Butcher knew what direction he was going to go and he just took it. And I think it's very, very nice. It is a little bit of a mishmash. You've got aspects from this and that and this, but I think it works. I really, really do. It's kind of like high epic fantasy with sci-fi, with this, with that. But I really do think it works. I think the pacing is well done. There are a few times just where it feels like you're plodding along with the characters, you know, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think that it is important to have those breaks. There's a lot of politics, guys. Like it's really, you need to be able to catch on to things, and you really need to know where things are happening. It's not just like one thing where you can be like, oh, okay, it's this. No, it's this group is doing this over here, that group is doing that over here, this is happening down here, that's happening over there. So you really need to be able to visualize where everyone is and what they're doing and why they're doing it. How does it relate to these other characters, which I think is very, very cool. So yeah, I enjoyed it. The magic system I gave a 3.5, edging towards a 4, simply because there's no real explanation for how it comes to be. You know, it just, I feel like there could have been a little bit more done to it. A lot of people were saying it's a lot like Avatar: The Last Airbender, but I don't think so. I think it's just the elemental part that's similar, and that's about it, to be honest with you. I don't think there's that many things that are drawn from there or here or anything. Also, the first book came out a year before Avatar started, so just bear that in mind. As for the characters, I gave them a 4.5. I really enjoyed the characters in this. I think they were interesting. I knew where all of them were coming from, and I really enjoyed it. World building, I gave a 3. Plot and pacing, I also gave a 3, just for those little bits in the middle that I think dragged on a little bit too long. And as for style, I gave it a 4. Like I say, I really love where it came from. And I think Jim Butcher's just, you know, he's talented. I'm currently reading the Harry Dresden Files as well. And I enjoy his writing style. I think it's very good. I think he was able to take away from Harry Dresden. He's well known for Harry Dresden. It's something that works for him, and he was able to bring something that's very different to the table, but still just as clever. So I'm really excited for that. I think you guys should check it out. Okay. The final series is the Moontide Quartet by David Hare. Now, David Hare has got a couple of other book series. I have not read any of them. This is my first time reading David Hare, and yeah, it was a interesting intro into David Hare. I think overall it was very positive. I enjoyed it. That's why I'm making this video. It's part of the video, and I think other people would enjoy it too. But it did teach me patience. So the Moontide Quartet, it is 4 books, and again, different points of views, different characters, different things happening in different places. So very complex. So your main characters are Alera, Ramita, Elena, and Simbella. So there are a couple other characters, mainly Kazim and Ramon, who also have points of view but aren't as central to the story. But yeah, so anyway. So in the beginning, I think the books, especially the first book, A Mage's Blood, it kind of starts off very slow. I think David Hare takes a lot of time to give you a lot of information about world building. He gives you a lot of information about the history of the world and where all of these different people come from, all of that. It really, the first half of the book, let me say, can really read like a historical fiction. You really got to be patient. It's a lot of information to take in, and I think he does kind of build up to the tension, build up to the action, what's going to be happening next. But overall, I think it was worth the wait. I really did enjoy the entire quartet. I think it is a little bit harder to read than if you were reading Lightbringer and Codex. He does have a much more different style of writing that's a lot more kind of harder to read, with like the way it's written and stuff like that. Not difficult, not at all. It's still easy to read, just a little bit more complex, a little bit more dramatic than Brent Weeks and Jim Butcher do. So the magic system is one that I maybe don't understand quite as well. You've got mages, and the mages have several different aspects that they can choose of, mystic and necromism and earth and wind, and you know, you've got a primary and then you've got a secondary, and because these are your primary and secondary, you've got these kinds of aspects and affiliations that you can do, and depending on what you focus on, this is what you're going to prioritize. And you know, so it is a very, for me, it was a magical system where I really had to pay attention and had to kind of visualize it in my head, because otherwise I did struggle with it making sense. So it was a little bit more of a complicated magic system, but I think it worked. I think for each of our characters who do have magic and who are exposed to magic, I think it does work in the way that David Hare made it work in the way that he wanted it to work. I think it worked out great. It was a little bit more complicated, and it did take a little bit more time for me to just kind of get into it, kind of be like, okay, this is what, okay, this makes sense, this is where this is going, that's where that is going. So overall good, just you need to be paying attention. And I think the way they've passed down the magic is a little bit, it's creepy. But I mean, nothing wrong with that, it's, yeah. So Alera is one of my favorites. I think in the beginning he rubbed off on me the wrong way. I think he was really just naive. He was very, very stubborn, and I think it really worked against him. And I think later on in the series he kind of comes out of his shell more. He finds his confidence, and then he becomes a much more likable character, and you can really see where he's going, and you can be really proud of how much he's grown, how much he's just developed as a character. So I think it's really, really cool. I enjoyed his character. I'm very impressed with how far he got, honestly. I think read the book, see where he gets to, and it's just like, if you had to see him compared to the first book, it's just like proud mama vibes. Romita, her story I found complicated me a lot. She was kind of brought up as a foreigner. If you take from some other characters' points of view, she was the foreigner, and she was kind of forced into a marriage with someone else, and you really feel her sense of duty. You know, you can really feel that this isn't what she wanted to do, but she's going to make the best of it, and she really is just a lovely character. You know, you can feel her fierceness of her love. You can feel just how far she's willing to go, and I really enjoyed her as a character. I think she really tapped into that inner strength of hers throughout the series, and it really brought out and inspired me, inspired some of the other characters as well. So I think it was a very difficult beginning for her, but I think she really came out for the best. And it's a little bit of an open ending, the end of the books, but I really think that she's probably one of my favorites, and I just think she's just so lovely. Alera. She was a complicated character for me. I really enjoyed her sense of duty. I enjoyed the fact that she was someone who was already strong when we introduced her. She was capable, she's great, but I think her weakness is in the fact that she saw other characters as one of her own, and that was a weakness used against her. I think was very, very cool. It brings in, David Hare brings in that sense of betrayal and revenge and just hopelessness very, very well. I was genuinely shook with her when things went wrong, and I really felt for her, and I like how she brings her strength back. You know, she's never this like kind of person who needs to be saved. She does the saving, and she's not it's not in an overly immaculate way. You know, it's still messy, it's still all of this, but she does it so well, and I think she's just so proud. She's such a proud character, and I love it. I think it's great. Okay, so those are our main characters. Simbella, what can I say? She is difficult. She was a difficult point of view to read. In the beginning, you can see where she's coming from, and you feel sorry for her, and then her story just gets very, very uncomfortable and very, very tragic. And I almost feel like she got there herself. You know, it was very much consequences of her own actions. Everything that happened to her, I think the politics that she gets herself stuck into is very uncomfortable. I honestly, I was quite uncomfortable reading her point of view, but I think it is something that is necessary. I think you need a character who has to face consequences. You know, you can't just have these things happening, and in the end there's no real consequences for anything until later. She's one of those characters, she makes her bed, she lays in it. You know, it's the whole time, and it also kind of snowballs for her, which, yeah, but oof. Ramon, he is one of my favorite characters. He's just so sneaky, you know, and he's so sneaky, and he's got this brain in him that he can just take charge, you know. He's just one of those characters you never want to bet against him. And he's just a really fun point of view. He really gets into where he needs to be. He finds his feet very quickly. And I think he's just a fun character to read. You know, he weaves his way in between the politics, and he's able to do this and that, and he knows which pockets to line and who to compliment and who's safe to annoy. And I really, really enjoyed it. I think it was great. I'm not going to go into Kazim because I could not in the first book. I could not. He drove me mad. But he character development, he developed lovely into the later books, and he really did become one of my more favorite characters. But in the first book, my goodness, that boy. I was so frustrated with him. But, you know, eyes open, we just move on from that. The world building is not overly complicated. I think David Hare took a lot of inspiration from the real world and he put it in. So it's not an overly fantastical, overly magical world. It's very much based off of real life things that have happened, and places and religions and those kinds of things, which I don't think is anything wrong with it. I think he does bring enough of that magical feel into it with the magic system that is not an issue for me. I did notice that some people found it a bit of a problem, but for me, I was like, you know what? Sounds great. There's a lot of lots of diverse characters. You know, there's characters that have accents and are different races and these kinds of things, which I think is really, really cool. And it's a prominent part of his books. It's a prominent part of the series. These different things and different people interacting and finding a way to coexist, which I think is really great, really important. And yeah, the overall plot, I think it started off where it was a historical fiction, or not historical fiction, sorry, historical fantasy, and then it kind of went off into where it wanted to be, which is epic fantasy. And I think it ended on that. I think it ended on a very positive note. It is a little bit of an open-ended. David Hare could pick this up again and make another book if he really wanted to, but it was still satisfying in the end, you know. You could really feel how the story impacted the characters at the end, and how it changed them and how it made them grow, all of the characters. And I think it's really, really great. And yeah, I just thought the ending was very satisfying. I really, really did. So my rating, I gave the magic system a 2.5 just because it was a little bit iffy. I couldn't really get to it in the beginning. The characters I gave a 4. The world building I gave a 2.5 just because it was very simplistic compared to some of the other world building that we've read. The plot and pacing I gave a 2. Like I said, just be patient. This is one of those patient books. You do get there, it is enjoyable, but you do need patience. And as for the style, I did give it a 3, simply because it is a little bit harder to read, not difficult, just a little bit more challenging. But overall, I thought it was a really great series, and yeah, all of these I think are really great. They're nice long books. They're something you can really grip into, get into the flesh of it, and really just read through them, you know, without having to just, yeah. So I really do think these are all of the great fantasy series that are worth reading. Relatively long, complex plot, complex world building, complex politics, and yeah, just really overall just really good fantasy, epic fantasy series. Awesome guys, that is the video for today. Thank you so much for clicking on it, and keep wondering. Bye.